Welcome to Imran Star Video, or as we call it, ISVi, the collaborative lens on Vancouver, unfiltered, unscripted, and powered by community. We're not just a voice behind the mic, we're a collective of creators, thinkers, storytellers, and city lovers coming together to spotlight the people, places, and energy that make Vancouver what it is, from coast mountain skylines to neon lit backstreets. We're covering everything from downtown buzz to the untold stories shaping our scene. You'll find us exclusively on YouTube. No algorithms, no filters, just real talk. For behind the scenes, updates, and chaotic brilliance in real time, follow us on TikTok and Instagram. So hit subscribe, drop a comment, and help us grow from 100 to 10,000 subscribers and beyond. Because this isn't just our channel and platform, it's yours too. Turn it up, get into it, let's talk Vancouver. This is ISVi. Welcome to Vancouver, or as we like to call it, Vancouver, because things and people have a funny habit of vanishing here. And not in the oops, I lost my AirPods at the Sunset Beach again kind of way. We're talking about entire neighborhoods disappearing like your ex's accountability after Pride Month. Blink, and what was once a thriving, culturally rich community is now a minimalist condo development named Aura West with zero parking, less personality, and a starting price of $1.4 million, and a kitchen that doubles as a hallway. In this city, erasure isn't an accident, it's an urban planning aesthetic. You know the type: pastel renderings of smiling couples drinking lattes in vibrant mixed-use zones that used to be somebody's great-grandmother's house. Neighborhoods don't just die, they're redeveloped. Cultures aren't displaced, they're revitalized. And history, that's reserved for museums, not zoning reports. Two of the most glaring examples of this municipal-level gaslighting are Hogan's Alley and Japantown, communities that didn't vanish due to time, decay, or a lack of aesthetic branding, but because the city straight up deleted them from the map in the name of progress. And by progress, we mean roads, white flight, and absolutely no sense of irony. If you've ever heard of them, congrats, the erasure campaign is working. But here's the thing, just because these communities were bulldozed and turned, paved over, or politely ignored doesn't mean they're gone. They live on in memory, resistance, murals, archive pages, and every side eye at City Hall. This isn't just a history lesson, it's a wake-up call. Vancouver didn't gentrify out of nowhere, it's been soft launching displacement since before your grandma was on Facebook. So buckle up, we're digging into the real tea, the jazz clubs, temples, corner stores, aunties, activities, and unapologetically loud legacies of Hogan's Alley and Japantown. This isn't just history, it's what happens when a city ghosts entire communities and pretends it's just urban renewal. Before Vancouver had rainbow crosswalks and luxury condos called The Junction, it had Hogan's Alley, a real, living, breathing community where Black joy thrived. Jazz clubs pulsed with life, and the air smelled like Sunday dinner and resilience. It was the kind of neighborhood where you could get your hair done, your spirit fed, and your business handled, all in one block. In other words, Hogan's Alley was the culture. Located in the Strathcona area, Hogan's Alley wasn't just a street, it was the heart of Vancouver's historic Black community. Picture vibrant homes, family-run restaurants, churches, barbershops, and underground jazz joints that hosted legends. We're talking Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong levels of iconic. Imagine living in a city where you could hear gospel harmonies in the morning and sax solos at night. It was community, it was sanctuary, it was history in motion. And then the city said, let's bulldoze it, because of course they did. In the 1960s and 70s, the city of Vancouver launched a little something called the Georgia and Dunsmuir Viaduct Project, which sounds like urban renewal, but was really gentrification's evil ancestor wearing a bureaucratic trench coat. Under the guise of traffic solutions and modernization, the city expropriated land, demolished homes, and displaced generations of Black families. No compensation, no real consultation, just sorry, construction begins Monday. The kicker, the viaduct didn't even solve the traffic issue. It was basically a 4-lane concrete apology for institutional racism, and it's been sitting there awkwardly ever since, like a giant middle finger to the community and crushed. Let's not forget the racism baked into this project like it was a city council special. Hogan's Alley wasn't removed because it was dangerous or decrepit. It was removed because it was black and proud, and the city wasn't ready for that. The area was labeled as blighted and problematic, which is code for not white, not wealthy, and not staying. It was redlining dressed up in municipal lingo. But Hogan's Alley didn't go quietly. The community resisted. Nora Hendricks, yes, Jimi Hendrix' grandma, helped lead the charge. She was an activist, a founding member of the Fountain Chapel, a spiritual, political, and cultural hub, and an absolute powerhouse who deserves her own biopic and probably a Netflix series with Viola Davis. And even after the homes were razed, the spirit of Hogan's Alley lived on. In the storytelling, the advocacy, the food, the music, and now the movement to reclaim what was stolen. Today, thanks to decades of grassroots organizing, the Hogan's Alley Society is actively pushing for land back, restorative justice, and a reimagining of the area that actually centers Black voices. Imagine that, Black-led development on stolen Black land. Revolutionary? They're just asking for recognition. They're demanding return. Because memorials are cute, but land equity and affordable housing, that's reparations, baby. So the next time someone asks why Vancouver doesn't have a visible Black community, remind them it did, until the city bulldozed it and built a glorified off-ramp. Hogan's Alley wasn't just lost, it was taken. And guess what? We're still talking about it, because you can't erase legacy with concrete. Just east of downtown, nestled in what's now called the Powell Street area, there once thrived a vibrant, tight-knit neighborhood known as Japantown, or as we could probably start calling it, Canada's most polite example of racial injustice. Think community gardens, martial arts schools, Buddhist temples, festivals, and businesses ranging from tofu factories to corner stores. It was bustling, joyful, and deeply Japanese Canadian, back when that was still allowed to exist uninterrupted. But spoiler alert, this is colonial Canada, so of course the good times got bulldozed. Just with fewer literal bulldozers and more, we're confiscating everything you own and sending you to a camp for security reasons. Security reasons energy. Welcome to one of Canada's most sanitized tragedies, the internment of Japanese Canadians during World War II. When Pearl Harbor happened in 1941, the Canadian government panicked, and by panicked, we mean immediately rounded up over 22,000 Japanese Canadians, most of whom were born here, spoke English, and couldn't have pointed to Japan on a map if you asked. Entire families in Japantown were forcibly removed from their homes, loaded onto trains like they were Amazon packages, and shipped off to internment camps in the BC interior. Their businesses seized, property auctioned off without consent, pets left behind, dignity disrespected on every possible level. The official excuse? National security. The real reason? Racism with a clipboard and a war as cover. Japantown didn't just fade, it was systematically dismantled. And unlike a lot of what Canada does wrong, this didn't come with an apology, and literally decades later, when most of the original residents were either dead or had been forced to start over in communities that treated them like walking threats. And no, they didn't get their land or homes back, not even a coupon. The Powell Street area was basically ghosted by the government, turned into a vague industrial zone, and then slowly gentrified into a space where you can now buy a $17 oat milk matcha from a minimalist cafe where a Japanese bookstore used to be. Progress? If you mean colonial amnesia with good lighting, then sure. Even today, the legacy of Japantown is barely visible. There are a few plaques, a couple of memorials, and the Powell Street Festival, which is organized by Japanese Canadians who've worked relentlessly to keep the culture alive despite a government that did everything in its power to erase it. Spoiler, the community didn't go anywhere. It evolved, relocated, and rebuilt, even while facing erasure, microaggressions, and the slow realization that a sushi emoji on your phone gets more recognition than the people who built a neighborhood. And just like with Hogan's Alley, there's still no meaningful land restitution, no full reparations, and no housing plan that centers descendants of those displaced. But sure, let's paint another mural and call it reconciliation. Japantown wasn't a footnote, it was a full chapter that the city tried to rip out and pretend never existed. But guess what? We kept the receipts. So the next time you walk through the Powell Street area and wonder why it feels like something's missing, it's because something is. A community was stolen and silence was the replacement. Let's call it what it really was. Urban renewal in Vancouver was basically displacement wearing a bow tie and carrying a clipboard. It wasn't a cleanup, it was a cover-up. A city-sponsored reboot where entire communities were deleted like browser history before a job interview. Oh no, we're not being racist, they said. We're just improving infrastructure. Okay, cool. But why does infrastructure improvement always come with the demolition of racialized neighborhoods and a sudden surge in luxury condo developments? During the 1950s to 1970s, cities across North America got obsessed with this thing called urban renewal, which, surprise, became code for erase low-income, racialized communities and replace them with stuff that makes white suburban dads feel safe during their 8-minute commute. Vancouver? Oh, Vancouver dove headfirst into it like it was doing a cannonball into a pool of performative progress. Let's talk about the Georgia and Dunsmuir viaducts, concrete monsters that now awkwardly float over East Van like the ghosts of broken promises. These weren't built because traffic demanded it. They were built because Hogan's Alley existed, a vibrant black neighborhood that was deemed in the way by city planners who probably thought seasoning food was a crime. So what did the city do? Called it blight, slapped the word renewal on it, and flattened the community like it was prepping for a SimCity speedrun. Meanwhile, Japantown never stood a chance in the post-World War II climate. The government already stole homes, auctioned off businesses, and relocated entire families into internment camps. By the time Japanese Canadians were allowed to return, the land had been conveniently redeveloped and modernized, leaving the community with a sorry and a seat at the Powell Street Festival instead of the homes and generational wealth that were ripped from them. This wasn't development, this was economic and cultural sterilization with good PR. They didn't bulldoze slums, they bulldozed culture, autonomy, and multi-generational roots. And then they handed developers the keys and said, build whatever you want, just make sure there's parking. Spoiler, there wasn't. Let's not forget the language used in the reports. Terms like slum clearance, blight removal, and revitalization were tossed around like confetti at a fake groundbreaking ceremony. Translation, we want to make this land profitable, and you, your grandma, and your church are in the way. Today, those same neighborhoods are being gentrified all over again, but now it's dressed up as progress. Bike lanes, artisanal bakeries, dog-friendly wine bars, and condos named after trees that no longer exist. You can almost hear the whisper, look how much better it is now that you're gone. So was it urban renewal, or was it racial displacement with extra steps, extra zoning laws, and extra helpings of denial? We'll let you decide, but spoiler alert, if it walks like injustice and talks like injustice, it probably just went through a city planning committee first. When a city bulldozes a neighborhood, it doesn't just lose buildings, it loses soul, story, and Sunday morning smells that no Starbucks can replace and replicate. What disappeared with Hogan's Alley in Japantown wasn't just geography, it was an entire ecosystem of culture, memory, and connection. And spoiler, you can't gentrify that back in with a rainbow bench and a Whole Foods. Let's break it down. When Hogan's Alley was flattened, we didn't just lose homes, we lost generations of oral history, music, recipes, and auntie wisdom that doesn't come from Google. This was where block culture lived, laughed, prayed, played, resisted, and thrived in a city that otherwise treated Black folks like a glitch in the census. Imagine growing up hearing jazz through your bedroom window, your neighborhoods all knowing your name and your business, and being able to walk into a church or diner or a barber shop where you didn't have to explain your existence. Gone. And Japantown, that wasn't just a cultural enclave. That was an entire city within a city, complete with martial arts schools, language classes, community newspapers, Shinto shrines, and grandparents who could flip a perfect onigiri while teaching you how to survive racism with grace and tenacity. It was where traditions were passed down like heirlooms, not flattened into sidewalk murals and labeled heritage by people who wouldn't know miso from mayonnaise. Gone. When these neighborhoods were erased, the city didn't just delete some addresses, they erased community infrastructure, emotional landmarks, and the kind of cultural wealth that can't be replaced by an oversized sushi fusion bar. It's like if someone burned your family photo albums and then handed you a tourist brochure and said, "Isn't this better?" Spoiler, it's not. You can't rebuild the warmth of a neighborhood potluck or the safety of walking down the street knowing the shopkeeper knows your pronouns and your cousin's drama. You can't slap a plaque on a bike rock and call it reconciliation. This was belonging, rooted, real, and built over decades. And when the city yanked it out to improve traffic flow or modernize infrastructure, it created a hole that no bus lane could ever fill. What's worse is the gaslighting. People say, well, these things happen, cities change. Yeah, cities change. But usually they don't erase entire communities and then act like those people never existed. What happened to Hogan's Alley in Japantown wasn't evolution, it was eviction with a press release. And don't forget the intergenerational impact. When we wipe out a community, we're also wiping out the ability of future generations to trace their roots, walk their ancestors' streets, or feel the kind of groundedness that white neighborhoods in the city take for granted. You're not just displacing people, you're displacing identity. So yes, what was lost was more than physical space. We lost the kind of deep-rooted cultural richness you can't find in a city-sponsored mural or a heritage district with 3 QR codes and a wine bar. We lost memory, we lost history, and we lost the right to call these areas ours. Because for many of the original residents, the city made it clear they were never welcome to begin with. You can bulldoze a building, but try bulldozing a legacy, you're gonna need a bigger a backhoe. Because despite the city's best efforts to pave over the past and pretend it never happened, the communities of Hogan's Alley and Japantown are not done talking. In fact, they've been doing the most, organizing, preserving, educating, reclaiming, while the city's been over here like, hey, what if we put a bench and call it cultural reconciliation? Nice try, Vancouver. But you can't bury people who learned how to survive earthquakes, racism, internment camps, and Sunday real estate listings. Let's start with Hogan's Alley Society, a Black-led organization that has been dragging the city respectfully but with purpose for years, demanding not just acknowledgement, but land back, housing justice, and restorative development that actually centers Black lives, not just Black aesthetics for branding. They're not out here asking for a plaque, they're demanding space, power, and futures. They've partnered with indigenous communities, architects, and historians to imagine what a reclaimed Hogan's Alley can look like. Spoiler, it includes people, not just pop-up markets and overpriced macaroons. Meanwhile, the Japanese Canadian community is thriving in its own form of resistance through art, archives, and activism. The Powell Street Festival is more than a cultural celebration, it's a full-on reclamation of public space, identity, and dignity. You thought this was just a place to buy mochi and watch taiko drumming? Cute. It's also a protest in disguise, one that reclaims land with joy, remembrance, and perfectly timed side eyes at city officials. And the resistance isn't just festivals and nonprofits, it's elders telling stories, youth creating digital memory projects, drag artists reimagining Japantown's legacy, and muralists turning alley walls into historical timelines. It's archivists collecting family photos that the government never returned. It's descendants saying, you stole our homes, but not our history. Even artists and historians are getting in on the action, turning memory into activism. We're talking podcasts, documentaries, underground tours, Instagram reels, zines, and performances that drag the city with both receipts and stage lighting. This isn't just about mounting what was lost. It's about reviving what still breathes in the bones of the city. Because make no mistake, this is a fight. Every attempt to reclaim space, rewrite the narrative, or even get a street renamed is met with bureaucratic yawns and budget excuses. The city loves to honor the past as long as it doesn't cost money, threaten real estate interests, or require them to admit they absolutely messed up. But guess what? The resistance doesn't need their permission because remembering is free, reclaiming is fierce, and communities that survive state violence don't wait around for city council to catch up. So no, Hogan's Alley and Japantown aren't gone. They're just waiting for the rest of Vancouver to realize they're not relics, they're revolutionaries, and they're not just remembering, they're rebuilding. One block, one story, one unapologetic truth bomb at a time. Okay, Vancouver, you've issued the land acknowledgements, commissioned the murals, and posted your Instagram story about inclusion with the right filter. Cute. But the ancestors didn't survive displacement, internment, and being taxed out of their homes just for a commemorative plaque and a heritage walking tour brochure. You want to do something real? Here's a radical idea. Try giving the land back. Let's be clear, the city is no stranger to the art of performative gestures. It's symbolic. If symbolic reconciliation were an Olympic sport, Vancouver would have gold medals, a branded podium, and a sponsored apology from a real estate developer. But when it comes to actual tangible change, the energy shifts, the purse strings tighten, the meetings multiply. Suddenly it's, we're forming a task force to review the community engagement about the framework that informs the steering committee's understanding of maybe, possibly, someday doing something. Translation, we're stalling hard. But guess what? We're done with vibes-only governance. There are concrete, actionable steps this city could take if it cared as much about justice as it does about rezoning. Let's start with the obvious. Return land to the descendants of those displaced from Hogan's Alley in Japantown. This isn't radical, it's basic restitution, and it's already happening elsewhere. If you can give luxury developers 10 years of tax breaks to build live-work pods no one lives or works in, you can hand back some square footage to people who are literally erased by policy. Fund Black and Japanese Canadian-led housing initiatives. Not consult, not to explore, not to review the potential for funding. Actually cut the check. Housing justice that centers those who are displaced is the least the city could do. And if we can build multi-million-dollar luxury towers with empty units, we can build affordable homes that honor ancestral memory. Integrate this history into the school curriculum. not as a sad side note at the end of World War II chapters, but as core Canadian history, because spoiler, this isn't Canada's story. This is Canada's story. Stop acting like racism was something that happened in the States and politely skipped over the 49th parallel. Rename streets, bridges, and buildings after the people and communities you paved over. Enough with the Sir, So, and So monuments, who contributed nothing but bad haircuts and worse colonial policies. Imagine biking across Nora Hendricks Bridge or walking through the J-Town Cultural Commons. That's how you shift collective memory with action, not acrylic signage. Create permanent cultural districts that aren't just tourist traps, but living, funded, protected community zones, spaces where Black and Japanese Canadian culture can breathe, build, and own the narrative. And no, you don't get to gatekeep who's authentic enough to participate just because a city planner read one Wikipedia page about taiko drums. And for the love of accountability, stop letting developers co-opt community revitalization as a smokescreen for profits. If a $5 million condo tower goes up and the only cultural acknowledgement is a sushi bar in the lobby, you've missed the point deeply. Of course, all of this would require the city to do something it historically hates doing: give up control and admit it was wrong. That's why none of this will happen without pressure. Loud, sustained, organized pressure from community organizers, artists, educators, elders, and that one auntie who never lets anyone forget what the city did in 1972. You know the one. Because let's be honest, Vancouver will do the right thing when it's less politically expensive to do so than to keep ignoring us. Until then, we'll keep showing up, speaking out, and reminding the city that healing isn't a linear process, but it's a lot faster when you stop trying to monetize the trauma. So here we are, standing at the end of a city-sanctioned detour through Hogan's Alley and Japantown, two communities that were revitalized into oblivion, paved over, and then casually forgotten like a politician's promise after Election Day. But let's be clear, this isn't a eulogy, it's a call-out, because while the buildings may be gone, the people never left, and the memory, oh honey, it's louder than ever. You can erase street names, auction off homes, flatten churches, and reroute bus lines, but you can't bulldoze his legacy. You can't silence the aunties telling stories over tea. You can't gentrify away the photo albums, the recipes, the jazz riffs still echoing from the walls of history. You can slap rainbow paint on a crosswalk, but the cracks underneath, that's where the truth lives. For every overpriced sushi roll on Powell Street, there's a ghost of a family-run noodle shop stolen by the government and never returned. For every rainbow crosswalk 2 blocks from the viaduct, there's a reminder that Vancouver's Black history wasn't just forgotten, it was evicted with paperwork. And we remember not because we're nostalgic, but because healing starts with truth, and truth makes people uncomfortable. Especially people who thought a plaque and a tweet during Black History Month would be enough. This isn't about dragging the past into the present just for trauma clout. This is about demanding the city stop romanticizing diversity while erasing the very communities that built it. It's about refusing to accept murals as justice and festivals as reparations. It's about saying, we see what you did, and no, we're not letting it slide just because you renamed a laneway. Because culture is more than an aesthetic. It's connection, memory, resistance, and joy. And when you rip that out, the wound doesn't just close up because someone built a yoga studio on top of it. So no, Vancouver, we haven't forgotten, we never will. And until the city gives land back, funds what it stole, and actually learns how to say, we messed up, with a budget attached, we'll be here. Remembering loudly, resisting beautifully, and refusing to disappear quietly into your development plans. You paved over Hogan's Alley and Japantown, but guess what? We're still here and we remember everything. And just like that, the city's pulse slows, but the story doesn't stop. You've been watching ISVi, Imran Star video, where voices come together and the city speaks back. We're a crew, not a single face, a movement, not a moment, and every episode that's built with you, for you, by all of us. From the seawall to the skyline, from underground voices to rooftop vibes, we're telling the stories that don't make the news but make the neighborhood. If this episode hits, pass it on. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram. Drop a comment, leave a like, and tell us what your Vancouver sounds like. We're building this together, clip by clip, story by story. So until the next drop, stay loud, stay collective, and stay in it. This is ISVi, signing off.